the next show is going to be.
To hear a revolution in talk radio, Liberty Talk Radio, where the critical thinking will defrag your mind of propaganda-ridden viruses induced by mass media news programming. No BS here, just the facts.
And now we present to you America's quintessential iconoclastic anomaly. Wow. In talk radio, your host, Joe Cristiano.
Welcome to Liberty Talk Radio, America's libertarian voice, broadcasting from our studio in Tulsa, Oklahoma, to around the world. I'm your host, Joe Cristiano, and this is your antidote to popular talk radio. Folks, it's time for us to take back control of our government now before this bureaucratic, oversized, and self-serving federal government starves us of our property, our freedom, our rights, and our liberty. But to do this, we must shed conventional thinking regarding our political structure. We need to be revolutionaries in thought, dissidents in action. Only after we recognize what our government is doing to our freedom and our Constitution will we start taking it back. And this program is just about that. And in that vein, today we are pleased to have a returning guest, Miss Carla Howell. She's the Libertarian Party Policy Director. Among her numerous achievements, Carla won over 300,000 votes when she ran as a Libertarian, when she ran in the U.S. Senate race against Ted Kennedy in 2000. Now, surprisingly, I ran for Congress in the general election of 2000 as well. I didn't do as well as she did. It was the highest vote percentage ever for a Libertarian in the United States race against a Democrat or a Republican. She has been a guest on all the major shows, Neil Cavuto, The O'Reilly Factor, Glenn Beck, Fox News. But now she's reached the pinnacle of success. She's on Liberty Talk Radio once again, and we welcome her. During our broadcast, we invite you to call with your question or comments, 646-652-4620, and press the one button if you want to break in and make a comment. That's 646-652-4620, and remember to press the one button. Carla, welcome back to Liberty Talk Radio.
Thank you very much. Great to be on.
It's so nice to see you again. Do you mind if I vent for a second my frustrations? And I'll venture to say that I'm not the only one frustrated with this election right now. But, like you, I have dedicated a good portion of my time over the past 30 years or 40 years to the Libertarian Party. And, you have to have the patience of Job, to stay with this. And I know that because I've been there, I've done it, and I am really frustrated with the way the entire party in general has been handling the presidential election. We have Gary Johnson, that I have a lot of respect for, but he certainly does not project the libertarian principles in a real strong, fervent manner. He's almost namby-pamby apologetic about it. And we have a vice president who's a Republican. I think a lot of people consider Gary Johnson sort of a liberal Republican rather than a libertarian. And then, of course, he picks as a running mate a Republican who sounds more Republican than Democrat. And they don't exude this urgency, this conviction that we've got to save this country and shake us up a little bit. Now, maybe it's just my own prejudices and the things I've been around too long, and maybe I'm getting old and I'm getting frustrated and I'm losing my patience. But we could have done better. For example, we could have taken one of the other candidates that were running for president and selected them as vice president. And I suspect, and this is my suspicion, that they selected Gary Johnson only because he was an ex-governor and they figured he would get a larger number of votes, rather than picking someone who really truly understood the libertarian principles and could truly articulate them, which is what the people are looking for, and they're not getting it. Thank you for listening to me rant. Carla, take over.
Well, Governor Gary Johnson and Governor Weld, like myself and yourself and everybody else who's run for office, we all have our strengths and weaknesses. And Governor Gary Johnson brings a lot to the table. And obviously he's a governor. He's a two-term governor. He was term limited. It's the only reason he's probably not still governor of New Mexico. Republican elected in a Democratic state. He really impresses me consistently as a guy who's driven by principle. And for him, that means really watching the purse of the taxpayers' dollars in government. And he proved that in New Mexico. And I think he's very sincere when he says he's running for president to cut spending 20%, and he's going to veto anything higher than that. He wants a balanced budget now. I mean, that in and of itself is enough for me, and I would think most people, to pull the lever for Johnson.
I agree.
I mean, we have no one who's talking about this. And when they've excluded him from the debate the way they did, we're left with the inane discussions of Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton slinging mud at each other, plenty of mud to sling, almost nothing about issues, and really missing the boat on what people really care about. And you say people want to hear libertarian principles. I think they would if they had enough exposure to them to really get into it. I agree that most people would love to hear that because it does speak to what most people want. But given the way campaigns are, given that we're still getting something like 0.1% of the publicity that Donald Trump is getting, we're limited in what the messaging that we can get through in an election. And so I think we don't really have time to get into libertarian principles a lot as candidates, generally speaking. What we need to do is put out what we're specifically offering. We're going to end the income tax. We're going to get rid of XYZ agencies, and why your life will be better as a result. And we got to keep it that simple. Gary Johnson has done that well on some of his issues, and I think the one that really stands out to me is health care. This is near and dear to my heart. This is the issue that I got into politics for a little over 20 years ago. And health care is an interesting issue because on the one hand, I will submit that it does more direct damage to human beings. Government interference in the healthcare marketplace does more damage than any other area of government, including war. And I don't say that lightly because war does a tremendous amount of damage. But healthcare literally kills people, literally leaves them in pain and suffering, missed opportunities to cure disease, relieve suffering, while handing them big, fat, bankrupting bills and driving our taxes up, driving our debt up, reducing our choices, and making us bow and genuflect to bureaucrats from afar in state and federal governments that are deciding you may get this test now, you must wait 3 months to see a doctor even though you're in pain. I mean, the suffering is tremendous. And along comes Governor Gary Johnson and says, I want a free market in health care. I want an Uber version. Stitches are us. Gallbladders are us, where these operations cost, 1/10 what we get charged today.
Correct.
Hello, someone's actually saying this. This is revolutionary. I have never in my 20-some years heard anyone talk like this on the campaign trail, really giving people some imagery where they can imagine, what if healthcare was like Uber? You call up, you use your smartphone, you get what you need instantly, the prices are low, it's competitive, consumers put in reviews, and you can see who's doing it right, who's doing it wrong, and allow the market to regulate rather than the government to regulate the behavior of providers. This would give us just an amazing, amazing revolution in healthcare. So I think that's one of the issues he's been particularly strong on. He's talked about immigration in very passionate terms in defense of the attacks that have been launched by Donald Trump on a lot of immigrants. I think he's articulated that particularly well. The fact that he's been a governor, and to back it up, he has a track record showing that this isn't just some guy with good ideas who's making a promise. This is a guy with 2 terms as governor and a track record showing that he really means it, and I think he does. And in that regard, I think he's very strong. I think he's seen as a regular guy, and a lot of people relate to that. He's the penultimate outsider. He's not a slick politician. He certainly doesn't pander to special interests. He's really there to do what he believes is the right thing, which is generally to shrink government and expand personal freedoms and reduce our military interventions overseas. And I say hats off to him for these things.
Have you been invited to any of the mainstream television programs like Neil Cavito recently to articulate exactly that? If the world heard that, it would turn the election over. Exactly what you've heard, word for word, and I mean that.
Yeah, unfortunately I have not. Most of our chairman Nicholas Sarwark has been on some pretty high-profile shows. He was on a long interview on C-SPAN in April. He's been on. He was on in a lot of sound bites at our convention with a lot of the major news media. And he's getting spots here and there, not nearly enough. He's a very articulate man and a great spokesperson for the party. And Arvin Vohra has had some appearances. We all have been on RT-TV, the Russian TV station, U.S. Press TV, the Iranian, the so-called enemies of the United States are happy to have libertarians on. And other international press, had some Swedish folks here filming a couple days ago. We've had French and people from the UK and Brazil, people from all over the world. International press, in many cases, taking more interest than the U.S. press in the Libertarian Party. Yeah. So, we express our point of view whenever we can. And certainly a lot. Overall, the media coverage is dramatically better than it's ever been. Still is a long way to go.
When I see them, I've seen them on RTV, and I thought to myself, we're giving the Russian government a headache, and we're giving good, solid libertarian freedom ideas to people in Russia, but not to the United States, because very few people in the United States listen relative to the other stations to RTV. And unfortunately, so many people think that if you listen to RTV, you're a communist and you want to take over, you want to overturn the government. But and being on C-SPAN is like being going to the University of Mars. That's the viewership.
Although I will say, if you get a chance to watch Nicholas Sarwark on C-SPAN, it was very interesting, much more so, I must say, than most C-SPAN programming that I see, which is pretty low-key and
very low-key, right?
Terribly emotional. But Nicholas Sarwark is a very good speaker, and he engages people, and that's worth watching. You can find it on the internet, or go to lp.org and search on Nicholas Sarwark C-SPAN. It's a good show to watch.
Right. Now, what is the strategy that the libertarian candidates are going to use, considering that the dislike of both of the mainstream candidates is reaching epic proportions? I mean, I'm sure Donald Trump is going to come back and find something about, as General Slunte calls Hitlery, rotten Clinton, find something about her that's going to trump what she says about him and his lewd comments and all that other. Everyone makes excuses about that. Oh boy, I've been in locker rooms before and played ball. Geez, what you hear in those locker rooms is you don't want to repeat it anyway. But I would never. No one ever apologized for it. But eventually, there's going to be tit for tat. They're going to go back and forth with these things, these accusations, and it's going to lower the standing of both of them. How is the Libertarian Party going to? Are they ready to take advantage of this? And if so, how?
Well, we're always doing everything. Yeah. The battle when you're an alternative party is to get free media, to get members, donors, volunteers, candidates, social media, to do everything you can, and to try. And most every idea that we hear, people have tried over and over again, and we are doing better. Our vote totals every election are getting higher, and they're probably going to go through the roof this election.
Hopefully. Yeah.
Yeah, our membership is up this year over 40%, and it may double by the end of the year. That's entirely possible. That's people who actually are dues-paying members. Our voter registration nationwide is certainly going up. We won't have the data on that till later in the year. It has been going up consistently for over 20 years, but it's probably going to accelerate. And we're just getting reports from all the state affiliates that this is what they're seeing. They're seeing an influx of members, and we hope to see a lot of that. We hope to see a lot of people getting on board in 2017 and really building their local affiliates and their state parties to a new level that we haven't seen before, bringing people into the fold and getting ready for some killer campaigns in 2017, 2018, and 2020. So there's no silver bullet. There's many things we do. We have candidates such as Leo Domowski running for judge in Baltimore County. He's got some great radio ads I was just listening to this morning. We have other states that are very well organized, states like Indiana, who really do a great job of recruiting volunteers as well as candidates getting out the vote. We have candidates like Sean Hahn, North Carolina, running for U.S. Senate, who has these catchy videos that he puts out. We have people getting endorsements. We have a woman running for state legislature in Washington State named Michelle Darnell, and she has gotten the endorsement of the Republican governor candidate, Republican lieutenant governor candidate, and another statewide candidate, which is quite unusual. She's running in a two-way race against a Democrat. We've got a libertarian running in Texas for Railroad Commission, which is a misnomer. It was originally a Railroad Commission, and really what it is Oil and Gas Commission, but they never changed the name of it. So that's a big deal in Texas. He has gotten the endorsement of the Dallas Morning News, the Houston Chronicle, and the San Antonio paper, three major papers in the state. He's articulate. He's got a PhD. He's an expert in the industry. He's articulate, and he's articulating a lot of interesting solutions to issues like fracking and property rights and concerns of the oil industry, which is of course huge in Texas. There's a lot of issues there, and the guy has a real interesting libertarian proposals for these issues of the day in this industry. So there's a lot of people doing a lot of things at all levels of government.
I know this.
We have a guy in Florida running for city council who has a good chance of winning. He's done some remarkable things down there. So there's a lot that we've been doing, a lot more we still need to do, and we just need people to just keep flowing into the Libertarian Party, build this party. Let's make it the second biggest party in the country. That's doable within a few years if we keep on this track.
Yeah. Now, I'm not criticizing people's honesty, hard work, and all that. It's my frustration. Because I guess I'm a businessman, and when you put something forward, it has to move, or else you gotta go out of business. And boy, if we were a company, we would have been out of business a long time ago. And it just, I guess what's missing is those comments that I think maybe I'm a good Monday morning quarterback, and that's about it. But he has opportunities to say certain things that would make people really think and jump forward and say, hey, I want to listen to this guy again. When they talk about the election, they can say, yeah, here we are. We're a country that broke away from England because we wanted our freedom. And now England is freer than we are. Shouldn't we take that in consideration? I mean, I want to hear things like that. I want to hear some oomph to it, too. And I don't hear that, and I guess that's why I'm frustrated. I'm sorry, I'm taking it out on you, Carla.
Well, the thing is, we just keep getting bigger. We get more candidates. We get more choices. And again, I think it's a time to celebrate. I mean, as somebody, and I would think you share this point of view, even though you're frustrated, when you consider what we've seen in the last 20 years, you go out and you petition, and I've been hearing this, and I experienced it myself petitioning in Pennsylvania and Washington, D.C., and Virginia. We've heard it from people all over the country that the voters out there are more receptive to libertarianism. They know what it is. 20 years ago, they would look at you with a blank stare. Libertine, librarian, what are you talking?
Right.
They have some understanding of what it is. Some people a pretty good understanding of what it is. They're generally positive in the way they respond when you say, I've got a libertarian candidate here, I want to get on the ballot. A lot of people go, okay. it's generally very, very positive, and the number of people who are negative and hostile is a fraction of what it used to be. So things are changing, and the future is looking especially bright because amongst the groups where we're showing strong support, independents, military personnel, and millennials. Millennials are the future, and the millennials are much more libertarian than the older generations,
Right.
and they are the future. So these are very, very bright times for the liberty movement.
Yeah. You know, when I was on commercial radio, I never mentioned, very rarely mentioned the fact that I was a libertarian because people didn't know what it was. You know, I used to tell this joke. I say, if I say libertarian, I said, you know, these Okies around here, they translate that, you must be some gay guy who likes to dance around in his dirty underwear. You're disgusting. I mean, that's their translation of libertarian. I know it sounds stupid, but, you know, I used to say that at commercial radio because they didn't have any concept of what, back then, what a libertarian was. You know, they
Right.
goes, well, are you a communist? Are you, you know, you have to be gay to be a libertarian? I mean, amazing that the calls that I got, I couldn't believe it. And
Well, times have changed,
Yeah.
right? A lot.
well,
a
I'm
lot,
glad.
in a good way.
I'm
Good
glad
way.
for that. Yeah. Now,
Yeah.
where, why did Gary Johnson pick his running mate when he is not a libertarian? He's a Republican. I don't understand that. How did that work out?
Well, you know, Bill Weld has libertarian leanings, and he has now joined the party, says he's going to stick with the party. He has been an advocate for legalizing marijuana, which may be mild for a libertarian, but it's pretty radical when you consider the circles he was running in. You know, and he was speaking out when he was governor. And so he's gone out on a limb on that relative to the people of his stature in government who are, you know, real, long-serving politicians in government. He's very in favor of free trade, that he and Gary share that view, as libertarians do, and he's been outspoken on that. But the primary reasons, which he has made no secret of, that Gary Johnson chose Bill Weld, fellow governor, to be his running mate, was because he brought gravitas, he brought credibility, and with that came a lot of media coverage and a lot of money. He's been known for his fundraising prowess, and you know, I believe they've brought in, or will have brought in, over $10 million, which will be about 3 times what any presidential candidate has ever brought in for the party. And you know, it's resulting in tremendous growth in our media coverage and our outreach. Now, again, we still have a long way to go. There's still only about 30% of the U.S. population who knows who Gary Johnson is. That's up from, you know, the old days when it was 5% or something. And if 100% of them knew, if we were getting the coverage we deserved, and certainly if Gary Johnson was in the debates, most everybody would know who votes.
Oh,
and
yeah, that would have been
we
beautiful.
would be absolute contenders. We would be right in there with a real chance of, you know, a very good chance of electing these 2 gentlemen as president, vice president.
Yeah.
So I mean, those were, I think, the driving reasons why he chose Governor Weld, and a lot of the delegates voted for him for the same reason, and or just to give Governor Gary Johnson his choice. Say, you know, we've nominated Gary Johnson to be our presidential candidate. We're going to let him pick his running mate.
Yeah. Okay.
And that was some people's reasoning.
Makes sense. That makes sense. I can understand that. I feel better now. See, my blood pressure is down because of you. Thank you so much. My wife will be so happy. Well, maybe she won't be very happy. Who knows? Okay. Now, where do they go from here? What strategy are they going to use, considering that both mainstream candidates are really so tainted? It's pathetic. I mean, it discourages me.
Where does who go? Let me. What are you talking about? Where does the party go? Where does the election go?
No, do you know what the strategy is with Wells and Johnson, and how they're going to go forward, considering the dislikability of both? You know, the disgust basically that people have for both candidates. I mean, that people are voting for Trump, and then he says something quirky, and they say, well, then I'll vote for Hillary. Is there a way to have some sort of slogan when Hillary or Trump say something inappropriate? don't go to the other, go to Johnson. I mean, what strategy are they using?
Well, I think one of their main strategies has been targeting states where he is polling particularly well. New Mexico, Utah are two examples. Now, you see different poll numbers, but some polls have put him at 24, 25% in New Mexico. And he's also done very well in Utah and some other western states. So that's been part of their strategy. Now, one of the things that is possible is that if he gets any electoral votes, and if neither Hillary Clinton or Donald Trump gets 270 electoral votes, they don't win. What happens is it goes to the U.S. House of Representatives, and the U.S. House decides and elects the next president of the United States. It is possible that that could happen. And New Mexico would be the most likely state where that could happen. Now, it's still a big challenge. But you have a situation where I think what could happen in the next few weeks is people are looking at Trump, at his latest difficulties, PR, and these videotapes in particular. It's kind of sad that this is the reason why, but nonetheless, he's a certain number of Republicans have abandoned him, and that battle's going in within the party. There continues to be a tremendous struggle within the Republican Party, and so it is conceivable that at some point people are going to say, he can't win. He can't win. And so, and then at the same time, people could start turning to Governor Gary Johnson and looking at him as an alternative and saying, what the heck, I might as well vote for a guy who I have respect for in terms of his ethics and his integrity, the fact that he's not a crony capitalist, he's not tied to a bunch of special interests, and I generally like the things he's advocating, cutting spending, reining in government. Now, when that starts to happen and he starts to become more viable, people who are voting for Hillary, some of them because they couldn't stand Trump, there's a lot of people like that, they don't like her, they might say, maybe I should look at this Gary Johnson, and they could start jumping in, as well as, and then some of the Bernie supporters who said, oh, we have to back Hillary, they might go, well, wait a minute, maybe this Gary Johnson's gaining some steam, maybe we'll jump in too. There is a possibility of him building momentum in these last few weeks. There's very little time left, but that is not outside the realm of possibility. So it'll be really interesting to see what happens.
Okay. Carla, could you hold on for about a minute? We can break for station identification very quickly. Folks, you're listening to Liberty Talk Radio. I'll call the number 646-652-4620. Press the 1 button if you'd like to break in or ask a question. We'll be right back.
Political talk derived from a historical perspective, not always palatable.
By the way,
but
can you hear?
Food for thought. Pure Libertarian Talk with host Joe Cristiano. LibertyTalkRadio.com.
Express Test is your go-to company for on-site occupational health testing services. That's right, we said on-site. That means we will meet you at your facility for a free health and occupational safety consultation. Express Test specializes in hearing conservation, respiratory protection, and employee safety. We can help you establish viable programs tailored to your business and employee needs. For your free consultation, call 918-743-2929 or visit us at expresstest.com. That's 918-743-2929 or expresstest.com.
Ranch Acres Audiology is about caring, about getting the most out of life, about personal attention.
Sometimes helping someone with their hearing is really helping them with more than just hearing. That's the goal of my practice. That's what my goal has been for 20 years.
You're invited to attend our next free Lunch and Learn seminar. Call us today, 918-749-7711.
This isn't your typical talk radio show. This is Liberty. Liberty Talk Radio.
Welcome, everyone, back to Liberty Talk Radio, America's Libertarian Voice. Let's see, we have a question here. Okay. Our guest today is Carla Howell. She is the Libertarian Party Policy Director. And
Political Director. Political Director. Sorry. Got to correct you.
I said policy, didn't I?
Yes.
Political director. I'm sorry.
They're
That's the way
close.
it's written. Well, it's pretty close. I should just get beaten until I'm bleed to death, but you won't kill me.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. The political director. I'm sorry about that. And let's see. We have a question here. Someone wrote down. It says, "What is the real goal of the Libertarian Party? Is it to win the election or what? I mean, what's the real goal at this point?"
That's a good question. All libertarians will give you a different point of view about that. Generally, it's a political party. We run candidates. We run candidates to elect them, and we run candidates to change government policy. Now, so far, we've elected people mostly at the local level, and that could change any day now. What we also do is change policy, and that's ultimately our goal. Our goal is, and the reason a lot of people come to the Libertarian Party is because it's not about winning whose body gets to sit in the seat of the legislature or the Congress or whatever. It's about changing government policy. And so we do that not only by electing libertarians, but by running campaigns where we run strong campaigns that challenge the incumbents, the establishment, big government, crony capitalist, union crony, special interest-driven opponents that are in office now with ideas for less government. And the more we get our message out there, the more we shift the whole debate, and we get people talking about our issues, and sometimes forcing our opponents to take our positions or move in our direction. That's the goal, is to move this country in a libertarian direction of much less government, lower taxes, lower government spending, get rid of the debt, get rid of thousands and thousands of unneeded bureaucratic regulations that make things worse, and stop intervening in wars all over the world. That's our ultimate goal. Now, the socialists co-opted, they never got very far electorally 100 years ago at their prime, but they effectively co-opted the Democrat and then the Republican parties, because a lot of their socialist policies are being enacted by Democrats and Republicans. Most libertarians would tell you, if we only get a handful of people elected to a high level of office, but we co-opt the Democrat and Republican parties or whatever parties to be libertarian, hey, we've done our job, we're going home, we're happy, that's why we're here.
We need sort of a Nigel Farage, right, from the European Union here in the United States, disrupting everything, and I love listening to him. Now, will we see Gary Johnson on mainstream television? The Channel 2, the CBS, NBC,
he's
ABC?
been on all. He's been on all these shows. He's been on plenty of top tier media. He's been on. He was on with Stephanopoulos a couple weeks ago. He's been mentioned on all the major networks and all the major cable shows repeatedly, and he's been on Fox Business News Network a number of times. He's been on all the big ones, just not to the frequency. I mean, when you consider Donald Trump is getting, they've put the amount of free media that he gets as having a market value of about $500 million every month. Imagine if you had a $500 million budget every month to spend on your presidential campaign. That's the free media that he's getting. They just cover him. Just turn on any station. Donald Trump, Donald Trump, Donald Trump, Donald Trump. So even though Governor Gary Johnson, the Libertarian, is getting on ABC, NBC, CNN, Fox, he was on a CNN town hall. For every one of those, there's about 1,000 mentions of Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton. So we're still getting drowned out in terms of media coverage, but we are getting onto the major media in a way that we never have before.
Well, how I guess my frustration is still pent up inside of me because I've been doing, as you have, for over 30 years, and after a while you want to see more. No matter how much progress the Libertarian Party makes, it's never enough. And I guess that's the way I feel, and that's unfair, but I realize that, and it's.
I mean, we should all be frustrated, and we should be abandoning the mainstream media because they have generally failed to cover this election. Here we have a candidate who's on the ballot in all 50 states plus DC. We're the only alternative party that's managed to do it, and we haven't done it in 20 years for our own nominee. Excuse me. So That in itself qualifies our candidate to be regularly covered, and they're not doing it. And people should be angry about that, and they should be going to alternative media, such as your show, and many others on the internet that are actually covering libertarian, and they should be looking to get their news there and make these big players obsolete. We make them obsolete, we make big government obsolete, and our candidates have a chance. So social media, alternative websites and portals, this podcasts, all these are the places we should be going to get our news so that we really know what's going on.
I wonder if we asked Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton to debate Gary Johnson on Liberty Talk Radio, whether or not they would respond. I doubt they would respond because they're very selective in what they do. But I would love to see that. I tell you, I would actually pay to have him put on. I would pay money to see that myself.
A whole lot of people would pay a whole lot of money for that, and I'm sure a few have tried to get them to. They're taking the position. Basically, the deal they make with the CPD, the Commission on Presidential Debates, which is controlled by Democrats and Republicans, is very much an insider club pretending to be some authority on debates, but it's basically insider trading between the Democrats and Republicans, and they've colluded and agreed. They set criteria to make it impossible for someone even as strong as the Libertarians are to be included by requiring this 15% threshold. The polls that they've used have been manipulated in certain ways that are unfair. He may well have met their threshold if the polls they picked had been more fair, and so they're playing this game, and part of their deal is we're not going to take any other opportunities. They did take that one with the it's a military I'm blanking on the name of the group, a town hall format that they did participate in, but for the most part they are a no to anything outside of the CPD's prescribed 3 presidential and 1 VP debates. So they're not going to, if you were CNN, they wouldn't probably take you, well, maybe they'd listen, but they're not planning to do anything other than these. And that's where they are. They're very afraid of Gary Johnson, actually, and Clinton supporters. There's one PAC in particular, individual spending $55 million in attack ads against Gary Johnson. The mainstream media has been attacking him. Some of these gaffes they've made a huge deal about, and they've been attacking him. So they are threatened. They are threatened by Governor Gary Johnson. I think they know well that had he been in these general debates, and if he should get into the 3rd debate, that all bets are off. There would be a great deal of uncertainty as to whether either one of the establishment parties would win.
Right. Is there a possibility that there may be a debate with Gary Johnson?
Well, the 3rd debate, they haven't announced yet whether he's included. It looks like his poll numbers, which have gone up a point or two in the last half week, is probably not going to be enough for them to say that they'll include him. It's not ruled out yet. They haven't actually declared it yet, but the next debate's just about a week away. So the chances are dwindling by the hour. But, what'll be interesting is to see how many people, they watch the debates for entertainment, but they're not going to buy it. They know they have choices. The bell's been rung, and they've heard that there is a 3rd choice out there that's very viable, and that is Governor Gary Johnson, Libertarian for president.
Is there any major heavily populated states that are leaning toward Gary Johnson, the Libertarian Party, other than his own state of New Mexico?
Well, the most heavily populated states are generally, most of them are solidly Democrat, except you have Texas, which is Republican. You have some swing states, Virginia, Pennsylvania, Florida, that are swing states and could go either way, or if something very unusual breaks, there's a possibility of Johnson coming in, which is quite a long shot at this point. But I would not rule it out. I would not rule out anything happening this election year.
What, in your opinion, has been the response from people who live in low-income areas. Call them ghettos if you. Listen, I'm from the streets of Harlem. I can talk this way. I may earn that right, you know. In fact, if there was a book out, Fort Apache, the Bronx, but they made a movie and they mutilated it in a movie. I mean, I used to sing doo-wop in Fort Apache area of the Bronx. So, so no one could call me prejudiced or, somebody else. But what kind of response does the Libertarian Party or have the low income, call them the, ghetto areas, the working poor,
Yeah.
the projects and what kind of response is that population saying, hey, this guy, although I may not I may not gain anything financially, these guys make sense, and this may be my ticket out. Are we getting any of that, or is that just delusionary on my part to even think that?
No, when we reach these groups, and, it takes money, it takes free media. Hillary and Donald are both very dependent on free media, and they've gotten a lot of it.
Right.
Not only do they have a lot of money, but they get, as I mentioned, billions of dollars worth of free media. And we don't get that. We get a fraction of that. But to the degree we are able to get into these communities where we have candidates, where we're able to get the message out, where we're able to really talk with these people, we get tremendously positive reception from especially the working poor. The working poor they are the ones getting screwed in this country.
Right.
They have very little disposable income. A lot of what they've got, they have to give to the government. If not in terms of federal income tax, in terms of state income tax, state sales tax, property tax, which they pay indirectly through rent if they're not a property owner, and many other, hundreds of other little taxes here and there that we pay for on many different goods and services. So they are paying it. They're getting a lot of the brunt of big government. They see the projects down the street from them of people living off government, gaming the system. They see government union workers around them who have houses and boats and vacation properties, and they're retiring much earlier than them on a fat pension, and they're going, what is going on here? And
Right.
they're small business people who are being regulated to the hilt by government, and they can't, they're getting busted for selling Lucy's, or busted because they don't have a license to braid people's hair, or they're trying to keep their business alive, and it's just permit after fee after bureaucrat that they have to deal with constantly, that's just beating down their income, taking away their time, demoralizing them. They can't expand. They can't, the minimum wage tells them they can't hire people who are going to be making more than them because they're losing money, and the minimum wage laws tell them they can't hire people. So instead of working 60 hours a week, they have to work 80 hours a week. These are the people who are suffering a lot. And when they hear our message, when they hear that we are opposed to the war on drugs, and that the people of color in communities where they're getting incarcerated, where they're getting frisked, where they're in some cases being abused because of racial profiling and other standards that have been built into the procedures for law enforcement.
Right.
These people are open to our message. They see that their kids are getting a terrible education, and they hear a libertarian message and they say, we can lower your taxes. That's a big deal. That's a big deal to working poor people. They have so little disposable income, and they're often having to work two jobs. We can get the government off your back if you're trying to run a business. That's a huge deal for those that are trying to go it alone. We can improve the schools by just quit throwing money at them and actually just bring them back to the local level, get all the state and federal bureaucrats out of it, return the control to local governments where you can keep the cost down, keep your property tax. That means your rent goes down. These kind of messages really strongly appeal to the working class folks in this country, as well as to a lot of people even poorer than that who aren't working, where they see that their lives are hurting, not just financially, but emotionally. They don't have the dignity of being self-sufficient. And we come along and say, look, there is a way for you to succeed. It shouldn't be this hard. It should be easy for anyone who isn't outright disabled or, just too elderly. Anyone should be able to get work and make a living and take care of their families. It should be easy, and the government makes it very hard, and they see how. So this is a huge area of the population that really needs to hear about the opportunity of a libertarian small government, because it is going to solve a lot of their problems.
Well, there are organizations such as Young Americans for Liberty, which I financially support, and others which I financially support.
Students for Liberty.
Yep, the Students for Liberty, right? And I make sure I make my donations. Hopefully, when things aren't going too bad in business, which is not very good right now, by the way, in this economy, I try to give them a quarterly donation, for example. How are they faring out relative to prior to the election? Are they faring out better? It concerns me when I hear. I see on television news correspondents speaking to students in college saying, why do you like Hillary, or oh, she's going to give me free education. It looks like they're not thinking at all. They're looking for, they want to be on welfare with everyone else, and there they are, students in college. I find that so disheartening, especially when you have groups such as Students for Liberty and Young Americans for Liberty, at the college campuses. How is that going since the election? Do you know how they're faring out?
I think you'll find a mix. I don't have some survey data that I can cite for you, but I think you're going to find a mix. There's a lot of libertarian understanding, and a lot of students and young people, millennials, lining up with libertarians. They want to end the war on drugs. They want their school loans to be less crazy. And libertarians have said, one of the reasons why they are is all these subsidies. They've made things worse, because what happens when you hand out subsidies and school loans and Pell Grants and all this, is that the colleges, what do? They jack up tuition. And some of these schools also have these obscene endowments. Harvard has something like $100 billion in their endowments. MIT, the Ivy Leagues, a lot of schools around the country are sitting on tens of billions or billions of dollars in endowments, while they're charging kids 30, 40, 50,000 and more per year to go to school. And that's insane. So you have a mix now, and some of them have bought the bait of free school, because Bernie got over 10 nationally televised debates, free media, 1-on-1 or 1-on-3 with Hillary Clinton, giving enormous publicity to the point of view of give away, give away, give away. Well, you just take them aside and show them alternative. I was at a student gathering at University of Maryland a couple weeks ago, and these are kids who are with some of these student groups, Young Americans for Liberty, Students for Liberty, and other groups on campus. And they had an anarchist speaking to them, an anarchist, okay? And, not just a small government libertarian. And that 10, 20 years ago, I did a lot of speaking on campus. And, with libertarian groups, I got a good reception, but I was very different. It was like, whoa, she's talking about things like ending the income tax. I'm watching a room full of 75 kids respond to a speaker who's talking about eliminating the federal government completely, okay?
By the way, sounds good to me, but go ahead. I had to interrupt.
And I'm looking around the room going, how are they going to react? They're clapping. Most of them are clapping.
I love it.
Clapping.
Oh, I love it.
And this is inside of the Beltway. It is inside of the D.C. Beltway at University of Maryland. I'm going, times have changed.
Yeah.
A lot.
Am I glad to hear that?
A lot.
Yeah. Some of the wealthiest people are inside the Beltway, and some of the poorest are right outside the Beltway, K Street and Gang. And then just right outside that Beltway, you find some of the poorest people in the United States. And you think people would look at that and say, there's a problem here. Houston, we have a problem, type thing.
Yeah.
And we don't see, many people don't seem to connect the dots, and they stay with their party come hell or high water, and I don't understand that.
Well, it's a matter of just repetition. What they hear all day and all night on mainstream media still has a very big, dominant effect on people's knowledge and understanding and beliefs. Now it's changing. It is changing, but it started from almost 100% dominance of what people hear, and it's changing. So the fact that maybe 10 or 20% of what they hear, as opposed to 0.1% of what they hear, that's a huge shift, a huge shift.
Well, when I ran for Congress, same year, that's in the 2000 general election, I tried to get an audience. I had to do mostly everything myself because there was really very little organization at all. Tried to get an audience with the black community, which is basically mostly on the north side of Tulsa. And just to speak to one of their meetings, I forgot the name of the organization, but I called them and I told them who I was and whatever. Never returned my call. And I think that would change today, though. I think that they would.
And it's going to be different with every group. And you got to get in there. And the thing about a lot of single issue groups, whether it's taxes, guns, gay marriage, marriage equality, Black Lives Matter, even Fourth Amendment, even though that's been one of the more broad spectrum special interest groups. But what happens with any single issue group is political parties move to try to take control of it. The Democrats and Republicans in particular try to own it. And then they go in and they turn it into just another outlet for them to line people up to vote either Democrat or Republican. So a lot of these groups are dominated this way, and they're not going to respond. And universities can be terrible about this, but again, it's a case-by-case situation where, if the right people are there, the right students, say have a professor, sponsor, or whatever the issue group is, if you can get in and find people who are really being loyal to their own constituency and giving a voice to the people really addressing the concerns of those constituency, they will give libertarians a fair hearing. But if they've been co-opted by the Democrats or Republicans, in many cases they won't. You can still pressure them in different ways. You can go appeal to their membership and their influential members and their big donors and say, look, do you want the alleged goal of this group, or do you just want a little power block that's part of the establishment? You got to choose here. And if you want to be true to your constituents, you want to let that libertarian voice in.
Yeah. Carla, we have someone on the line. What line are they on? Line one? Caller, you're on the air. Your question or comment, please.
Hi. Yes, I've got a question for Carla. This is Diane. I'm from Jinx, Oklahoma.
Hello, Diane.
Carla. Hi. I'm trying to make a case to my niece who has just come of voting age regarding the media and how liberally biased it is. I remember once I got an email that outlined this is how it's biased. The CEO, the president, all these people, so-and-so is married to somebody who's in the White House, that kind of thing. That actually pointed out how these people are within the media, what their relationship is to somebody who's connected to the Democratic Party. Is there a place where I can go? I don't always trust emails like that. Do you have any research that actually shows here's why they are biased?
That's a good question. I don't know offhand. I know that I would first point out that you've got a portion of the media that's in the Democratic camp, and you've got a portion, especially right-wing radio, Fox News, The Blaze, a few other outlets, One America News to some degree, that are Republican aligned. Most of them line up with a strong bias that is either Democrat or Republican. So it's not all Democrat, although certainly the Democrats have most of the print and airwaves. I don't know offhand. I've seen anecdotally things like what you just mentioned. It would be great to see more of that. One book that I happened to see at a bookstore and read called This Town. It's about Washington, D.C., and it's a lot about the ties between media and the political class of Washington, D.C., and it articulates a lot of the relationships. And it's an interesting book that really exposes just how corrupt the whole thing. Also, the Netflix show House of Cards, though it's fiction, I think it illustrates to a large degree the very, very strong ties between media and government. And those are two places where you could start perhaps to say, take a look at these. These will give you some insight into how it works. When I was working in Massachusetts on ballot initiatives to cut the income tax, the guy who was the primary spokesman for the coalition that was allegedly against our income tax cut, he was married to a prior president of the Massachusetts Teachers Association. I ran into a lot of journalists who had teachers who were their spouse and these kinds of things. So the incestuous ties, don't always take a lot of digging, but in terms of having one place where you can collectively see all of those connections, I don't know where you can do that, but I would start with this town and House of Cards, and there's probably a lot of other good ideas. But a good question to ask.
Thank you, Carla. Appreciate your calling.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
That gives me a good start.
Right.
Thank you.
How does Gary Johnson have any particular strategy to to connect with the less advantaged population? The chronically unemployed, the minorities, and whatever. Is there any plan that he has that I'm unaware of?
Well, he is connecting with Latino voters significantly with his very strong stance on immigration. In fact, we got a call from PBS the other day wanting a statement from the party because a congressman in Arizona was calling on other congressmen and women to direct Latinos to vote Democrat or Republican. Do not vote for those third parties, which is a sign that we're getting through. And I think Governor Gary Johnson in particular, because he takes it very personally, being from a border state of New Mexico where he was governor and where he built a very successful construction company, he's seen many immigrants, and he has said these are good people who want to earn a living, and they're being mischaracterized significantly, especially by Donald Trump. So he has made some inroads with these folks, big time. And, he has been very much outspoken about ending the war on marijuana and moving in the direction of ending the entire war on drugs. So we stop incarcerating people for victimless crimes. And this is something that very much appeals to the communities, people of color, and poor folks in general. Right. So there's a lot about the Libertarian Party and the specific positions that Governor Johnson has taken that attracts these groups.
Do you think that there will be a surprise in attendance by or voting by the silent majority out there that will come in and and all of a sudden they come in and they just vote Libertarian and all of a sudden overpower both the Republican and Democrat Party, which I would love to. I guess that's my
hope. Wouldn't that be the best?
I
People
tell you,
do it. Free yourselves.
Oh,
vote
God.
Libertarian. I think the people who don't do that are going to look back on this election and regret it if they didn't.
Yeah.
Because this is a huge opportunity we've never seen before.
I
know,
and
I think we're going to keep growing regardless, but this is a huge opportunity. What people need to realize is that when you vote for lesser of two evils, when you vote for Democrat or Republican, especially the likes of Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton, what your vote says is, I endorse everything they've said.
Right.
They won't count you as a protest vote against the other guy. They will count you as being fully in support of Hillary Clinton or fully in support of Donald Trump. And what they will also use that to do is to continue to marginalize an alternative, a libertarian small government alternative that gets government off your back, cuts your taxes, gets rid of excess regulations, just makes you much more free, makes you personally free, keeps us out of wars and out of foreign conflicts, reduces the risk of terrorist blowback and attacks. People will be missing their chance. Excuse me, an interesting PAC got formed, and they came up with this thing called Balanced Rebellion. Have you seen it?
No, I haven't. I've never heard of it before.
This was not coordinated with the Libertarian Party or the Johnson campaign. It was a surprise to me. It was brilliant. And basically, Google it, Balanced Rebellion. I think it's balancedrebellion.com. They've got a video. Last time I looked, there was over 25 million views. Wow. And what they're basically doing is saying, look, if you can't stand voting for Trump, or you can't stand voting for Clinton, and you don't really like either of them, we've got a system here where you can make a deal. If you're somebody who was going to vote for Trump, we'll find someone who was going to vote for Clinton and get you guys to effectively sign a contract and agree to vote for neither and vote for Gary Johnson instead.
Wow.
So if you're worried about your vote causing the election to swing one way or the other? Well, here's a way where you can not have that happen and actually vote for something you believe in, that you approve of, that you find respectable and dignified and worthy of your vote. BalanceRebellion.com. So that is something that I hope people are taking advantage of that, and they check it out if you haven't already.
Well, you're leaving us on a very positive note. That's terrific. I feel much better now than I did before the program started. We're at our witching hour, so allow me to give you the last minute for this program.
Well, LP.org, Libertarian Party website. Our Facebook is Libertarians. Check us out. And above all, find out the Libertarians on the ballot in your area. Vote for every Libertarian candidate that you possibly can. Go to their websites, check them out. There's a lot of tremendous, wonderful people running for office. These are people who are, they are the ultimate altruists. They are doing this to make this country better. I hear it all the time. I talk to these candidates all the time. They're doing this for their children and their grandchildren. They're doing it because they care about this country, and they're ready to go and work for you and say bye-bye to special interests. That is not why they're running. And these are where we need to vote. The more people vote, your vote matters like you can't believe, because the bureaucrats in state halls and in the federal government here, they're looking to see how many votes are, and they're paying attention to that. Your vote it screams in their ear when you vote Libertarian. Absolutely screams for liberty. It is an opportunity of a lifetime. Don't miss it in 2016. Vote Libertarian and come and visit LP.org. Check us out, and if you're so inclined, please join us or change your registration to Libertarian if you can do so in your state. We would love to have you.
Carla Howell, thank you so much. You've been a wonderful guest once again. I hope you will accept our invitation to return at a later date.
I love to. You're a delightful host as always.
Thank you so much. Okay. Thank you. Oh, what a way to end the conversation. Huh? What a compliment. That's wonderful. Folks, this is the end of today's broadcast. We'd like to thank our sponsors for the financial support, and we'd like to thank you for listening in. You can further the cause of liberty by recommending this program to your friends, and let us hear from you. Our email address is comments@libertytalkradio.com. Remember, as my wife would say, you're either allowing your liberties to be taken away or you're striving to protect them. Unfortunately, there is no middle ground. Until next time, this is Joe Cristiano. You've been listening to Liberty Talk Radio. Stay well. Stay tuned.
Goodbye and thank you.